What is Neom? This is Neom, or here, to be more precise, in the northwest of Saudi Arabia. But Neom is more than a place. It's a home for people who dream big. Bigger than that. That's more like it.
What you just saw was a lie, or at least parts of it were. Neom is Saudi Arabia's $1.5 trillion city, roughly the size of Belgium. It will have everything that a trillion-dollar project should have. A glass city, flying taxis, robot employees, a luxury island, and a year-round ski resort. In theory, the NEOM seems like a perfect starting point for a country whose revenue is largely based on oil exports. That's why the project is being marketed as a golden investment.
Neom represents a global opportunity for one, changing how the world does business by making the region a special economic zone, easing the way for entrepreneurs to blaze their trail.
When Neom was first launched in 2017, it was termed a global center for business, tourism, and healthcare. And at the time, it did seem to be the case. Neom was able to sign up hundreds of big names like AECOM, Aramco, and Oracle, and set up an investment fund to collect money for its construction. And as for the people, well, they seemed to be quite enthusiastic too. After all, this city seems straight out of a Christopher Nolan movie. But just like a Nolan movie isn't cheap, this city isn't either. Initially set out to cost $500 billion, the price has been revised and updated to $1.5 trillion. So who is funding this trillion-dollar dream? And can it become a reality? When Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS, took over the country in 2017, he knew he didn't have his grandfather's luck. It was during his grandfather's rule that oil was first discovered, changing Saudi's luck overnight. The world shook hands with Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia shook hands with success. However, times have changed since then. The world is making a clear shift to green energy sources due to the negative effect of fossil fuels on our environment. MBS knew that he had to do something, and he had to do it fast. So just 4 months into his tenure, Saudi Arabia hosted a global event in Riyadh called the Future Investment Initiative. In this very event, Neom was launched.
لا نعمل فقط إلا مع الحالمين، لأن هذا المشروع ليس مكان لأي مستثمر أو أي شركة تقليدية.
While describing Neom, the Crown Prince proceeded to use this analogy.
مثل الفرق بين هذا الهاتف وبين هذا الهاتف. هذا ما سوف نعمله في داخل
Neom.
Neom was suddenly everywhere, and their PR team did a good job of promoting it. Big names like Norman Foster, Sam Altman, and Dan Doctoroff became part of Neom's advisory board. This meant that the project was in good hands until these very people started to leave, and that was the start of its downfall. Neom is owned and funded by the kingdom's public investment fund, and that's where the problem lies. Saudi Arabia's public investment funds was established in 1971, and to this date, it has financed hundreds of projects in the country and abroad. This fund has stakes in just about everything, from Uber to Tesla, to Heathrow Airport, and even Nintendo. PIF has only grown bigger each year. However, the year 2022 was an exception. This was the year it registered an $11 billion loss. The kingdom's oil sale didn't seem to help much. As of April 2024, the price of one crude oil barrel stood at $81. But apparently, this isn't enough money for the country's lavish dreams. The IMF stated that the price of a barrel needs to be $96 if the kingdom wants to meet its 2030 targets. Not surprisingly, their economy was struggling. The country's GDP is expected to grow by a mere 0.8% in 2024, a far cry from a previous estimate of 4.4%. Saudi authorities also expect the budget to remain in deficit for the next 3 years. This is bad news for Saudi Arabia, a nation that has utilized oil profits to go from this to this. Like most construction projects, this financial shock has hit Neom hard. Its budget was slashed by 20%, making it a sore for the kingdom's wealth fund. But it's not just about the money, it's also about Neom's impossible-to-achieve dreams. Neom's official channel is filled with stunning AI-generated videos about how the city will look once completed. But it seems like developers are finally getting a reality check. The line, which is a 170-kilometer linear city within Neom, is being scaled back by 98%. By the year 2030, it will only reach a length of 2.4 kilometers as opposed to its original goal. At one point, the city was expected to host 1.5 million people by 2030. Now fewer than 300,000 people are expected to live in it by the end of the decade. So what exactly went wrong? And can it be fixed? The problem lies not only with the execution, but also with the design itself. Creating a city longer than the Empire State Building in the middle of the desert seems like a joke. To take things a step further, the line will have no roads, no cars, and zero emissions. The city would be 100% powered by renewable energy, and 95% of its footprint would be preserved for nature. That's not something we're saying. It's NEOM's official site. Not to mention, NEOM is being built in a region where the daytime temperature exceeds 50 degrees Celsius. This means that they have to air condition the whole city, dramatically increasing the energy demand. If you look at most cities of the world, their shape is almost round. This gives them enough space for future expansion or modifying existing infrastructure. The line, on the other hand, will have 9 million residents sandwiched between two glass mirrors. This makes their population density higher than any city in the world. To put this into perspective, Manila, a city in Philippines, is the current densest city on the planet. It has a population density of 42,000 people per square kilometer. The line would still be 5 times dense than Manila and 10 times denser than Manhattan. To house this many people in the middle of nowhere is a problem that needs to be addressed. Who's going to live so far away in a desert where your only means of escape is through a train? This project seems to be feasible for people who work from home or are retired. While designers promise that all basic utilities are needed within a 5-minute walk, there's more to a city than that. What makes a city unique from, let's say, Village is the amount of opportunities in its immediate environment. For example, you should be able to cross districts for job search or attend a concert in a neighboring city. Since Line is a car-free city, there will be an underground high-speed rail for longer distances. A journey from one end of the city to the other end will take only 20 minutes. For shorter distances, people would have to rely on shuttles or their own 2 feet. The width of the city is just 200 meters. This means that unlike traditional cities where buildings are spread out in space, the line would have limited horizontal movement. To solve the space issue, structures would be spaced out in a 3-dimensional pattern. So one building will be hovering over the other, and so on. This makes the place look like a shopping mall rather than a livable city. Would you live in a place like this? Comment below. If you liked the video so far, kindly take a moment to subscribe to our channel. We bring the latest news in the construction industry with 2 new videos each week. Enough with promotions, let's return to NEOM. It's not just NEOM's eccentric design or its price tag that makes its investors hesitant. A series of socio-political events starting from 2017 irreversibly destroyed the new project. In 2018, the world witnessed the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, a journalist who was a vocal critic of Mohammed bin Salman's policies. A 15-member squad representing the government of Saudi Arabia attacked him in the Saudi consulate and killed him. Khashoggi's murder led to widespread international outrage, resulting in a diplomatic crisis for Saudi Arabia. Many high-profile figures like Norman Foster, Sam Altman, and Dan Doctoroff distanced themselves from the project. To complicate matters further, MBS ordered the arrest of 200 wealthy businessmen, princes, and officials in the same time frame. This crackdown made potential investors rethink about their policy towards NEOM or any other Saudi project. To clear space for NEOM mega city, over 6,000 people have been forcibly relocated. Those who resisted were ordered to be killed by the government of Saudi Arabia. An ex-Saudi intelligence officer confessed to this himself.
The order said whoever continues to resist should be killed. So it licensed the use of lethal force against whoever stayed in their home.
By now, it was clear that MBS harsh policies and utter disregard for human rights were going to be a problem for NEOM. What is surprising is that this is not the first time Saudi Arabia has spent billions on creating a city from scratch. King Abdullah Economic City tells an identical tale. This is a city that sits directly opposite the Red Sea with a row of villas, golf courses, and a 5-star hotel. Clearly, it was built to attract the country's mega-rich population. It's just an hour drive from important cities like Jeddah and Mecca. Despite the project being 13 years old and a staggering investment of $100 billion, only 10,000 people live here. A former government advisor commented, "Their marketing was amazing, but the whole concept behind it was flawed. The economic base was never there." We see examples of such places throughout the world. The most interesting example is from a ghost town in Turkey, just 3 hours away from Istanbul. This is a place with 600 Disney-inspired mini-castles called Burj Al Babas. The project began in 2014, aiming to create a lavish resort-style community with homes designed to attract wealthy buyers, particularly from the Middle East. The cost of each villa ranged from $37,000 to $53,000. With an initial investment of $200 million, the developers aimed to finish the project in 4 years. It was originally successful, with approximately half of the castles selling in advance. However, by 2018, sales had significantly declined as buyers defaulted on payments and new sales ceased altogether. The developers were now sitting with a debt of $27 million and had to file for bankruptcy. To this date, Burj Al Babas sits as a ghost town with its row of fairy tale castles. This is a lesson for developers that no matter how creative or beautiful your design is, if the market isn't there, your project will fail. Next up, we have a project in Malaysia built for a cost of $100 billion by China. And you know what? It's still a big failure. We are talking about Forest City, a 30 square kilometer residential development built on 4 islands. Much like Burj Al Babas, the city wasn't targeted at locals, but rather international buyers, particularly from China. With an aim of housing 700,000 residents, only 9,000 people currently live in this city. Even though its location is in Malaysia, it was developed by a Chinese property giant called Country Garden. Unluckily, the political climate of Malaysia changed unfavorably for the project. When Mahathir Mohamad became prime minister in 2018, he opposed foreign investments and announced restrictions on property purchases by foreigners, which directly affected Forest City's sales. The global pandemic further solidified its loss by halting construction and travel, making it difficult for potential buyers to invest. As of now, only about 15% of the project has been completed, with a highly low occupancy rate. The once promising development has been labeled a ghost town. We will go in depth over Forest City in our next video. So if you're in, tell us in the comments. In the meantime, you can also watch one of our videos on ghost cities in China. Anyway, thanks for watching and we'll catch up in the next video.